What if the shittiest moments of our lives and careers is where the real seeds of possibility lie?
In our podcast, A Life Worth Working, we offer up an extra shit pile episode where messy moments fertilize remarkable futures. Rather than highlighting the shiny milestones of success, we dig into the raw, unfiltered stories behind career and personal transformation. Here's Vriti Saraf's contribution to the shit pile.
Vriti, one of the things Michelle and I talk about is this metaphor of manure or the shittiest moments in our career paths and how it can be fertilizer for good things to grow, right? In the moment, it just feels like shit. It just feels awful. But actually, within that, there is so much possibility that might spring forth, even when we can't see it at the time. So can you give us kind of paint a picture of a concrete example of what failure or a shitty moment in work has looked like for you?
Sure. So in 2020, I had the idea that I wanted to connect educators all over the world, right, through a virtual space. And so the first iteration of the company that exists now was called K20 Educators. And it was a for-profit that was going to create a virtual environment to connect educators all over the world and be able to facilitate professional development learning experiences for them to be avatars and be able to create their own spaces, things like that. And I was so confident with the idea. I was like, this company, this for-profit is going to get funded. It's going to get millions of educators to engage. This is the idea that hasn't existed and we'll move on. So I tapped into some of the people that I had met in conferences that year. And by the way, I had no relationships before this point with ed tech professionals or with anybody in the industry. I was complete deer in the headlights, right? And somehow I got myself to a VC partner. And this was a VC that was very well known for innovative work, for impactful education work. And the partner that was talking to me was really honest and was very open to new ideas. So I was super excited, right? I was just like, I'm going to pitch this idea and I'm going to get $1 million in funding. And I pitched the idea to him and he was like, this idea is not going to work. It's one, a bad idea. Two, it has no business model. How are you going to make money off of this? Are you going to sell teacher data? I was like, no. Are you going to advertise? I said, no. Then you don't have a business. You can't do this. And then third, completely unimpressed by any vision or anything that I had. So this was a year and a half in the making, right? This was an idea that I had developed. I created pitch deck. I was so confident. I gathered coalition around it. And everybody thought it was a great idea. Everybody around me was like, yes, Vriti, this is it, right? And then I told this idea to, and he was just like, this is just not going to work. And I sat with him for an hour and he just kept telling me how bad of an idea it was. And he was so generous to have spent that time with me. And then he started identifying companies that had tried this in the past and it didn't work. After that meeting, I left not disappointed that the idea was bad. I left disappointed that he didn't understand how great the idea was. Right? And so still at that point, I was just like, he just doesn't get it, you know? And I'm pitching this incredible idea and it's going to be the next big ed tech and blah, blah, blah. And I kept going at it for another year, right? What I didn't realize at the time was that he was right, right? There was no business if I wasn't willing to sell data and things like that. And I wasn't willing to do that because as my experience as an educator, I just wouldn't want to be a part of something like that. It took me a year and a lot more rejection for many more VCs to realize that this was not what I should be doing. And this was not how the world was going to be helped because people have already tried this, there are already communities existing, things like that. And so that was a really low point where I almost quit. But the thing that kept me going was I kept facilitating workshops and events with educators for free and just talking to educators about emerging tech. And we had these great meetups and we had these great groups where we were just talking about the future of education. I was learning so much, right? I was learning about different ideologies that were out there within education, different frameworks, different ways of operating, different emerging concepts micro-credentialing, competency-based, stuff like that. And what that led me into was really not focusing on the virtual environment as the sole idea for the company, but really thinking about how do I upskill educators on emerging technologies. And that's what led me down the path that I'm on now. And it was actually Tony Wagner, if you guys are familiar with his work, who said to me one day, I don't know how I crossed paths with him, but we became great friends and we were at his house on the lake. And he said to me, Vriti, the idea that you're pitching is not a for-profit, it's a nonprofit. You need to do this from a public utility standpoint and not from a money-making standpoint. And that was the time where I was like, oh, I think he's right about this. And so that's, what went from like a really, just low point to, okay, I think I need to actually reframe what I was thinking about.
Yeah, that's so powerful.
I really appreciate this story because Vriti shares just how hard it can be for us to take in hard and good feedback. It can be so humbling that we aren't ready to accept it then and there. And then later, we hear that same feedback in a different way, and we're finally ready to accept it.
There's this gardening term called humus, the decayed vegetable matter that feeds the roots of plants. And I love it because the word humus comes from the same word root that gives rise to the word humility. It's precisely how you and I think about these shitty moments and how they can leave mud on your face, and yet somehow, when we're ready, they can create the fertile soil in which something new can grow.
Yes, nothing is wasted. I've got it tattooed on my arm.
And it's amazing. So beautiful. I'm also jealous and thinking about getting my own.
Yes. So Vriti, you have a new baby who's 3.5 months old, and you also have just a really great and wide and open perspective on technology and also thinking through the future of technology. And I'm curious, as you look at her and you think about the kinds of advice you might give her about her career trajectory, what do you think you'll focus on for her?
I think at different times, there will be different things. And with the evolving world and the evolving technologies, I don't think there's anything that I can predict at the moment. But the thing that I do know is that introducing screens and technology to really young people is not, in my opinion, the best path forward. And we know that developmentally, children need to have human relationships and learn from things that are not digital to fully develop their capacities. And so early on, I won't be introducing any technology to her. But the things that I will be introducing are the foundations of technology. So for example, I'd like for her to know what an algorithm is, but not through AI, through understanding how to break down the concept of an algorithm and looking at patterns in the way that she plays music or the way that she looks at numbers, right? I want her to understand neural networks, but not through, machine learning. I want her to understand it through the connections that she makes with her drawings or the connections that she makes with different things that she's learning in museums, So I want her to understand the foundations of technology, but through analog ways, so that when she is introduced to technology, she understands the strengths and the weaknesses of those technologies and can critically think through how to actually operate and interact with them.
Can you come teach my kids?
I love that. It's beautiful. This has been another bonus shit pile episode of A Life Worth Working, where we showcase how even the messiest of moments can lead to remarkable futures.
For more about Vriti Saraf's journey, make sure you listen to her full interview on A Life Worth Working. And please make sure to subscribe to our podcast so that you can feel less alone in what can sometimes feel like the winding spaghetti paths of our career journeys.